In this video, I will show you how you can make custom radio buttons in CSS. First, we will create a new folder for our project. Custom CSS radio button. And let's add it to our code editor. Here we go. Now, if you've seen my previous video on how to make custom CSS checkboxes, you will be pretty familiar with the method we're going to use in this video. The first thing we'll do is create two new files, index.html and style.css. In our index.html, we will create a HTML tag and our header tag. Let's give it a title of custom CSS radio button, and link our style sheet as well, style.css, and we can create our body tag. In our body tag we can create a main.container, and inside that we can create our form.custom radio button form. And let's remove the action attribute. We don't need that for this tutorial. Inside our form we will create an input of type equals radio, name equals gender, value equals male, and ID equals male. And let's create a label for that input. So the reason we added an ID up here on our input is so that we can reference it down here in our label. So in the for attribute we will write male, and it will look for any input with an ID of male. So let's copy this and make a female input. Let's write something in our labels, male and female, and let's see what we have. Pretty boring so far, but we'll change that in a minute. Let's go back to our styles and start styling our markup. First we will target the container, give it a width 600 pixels, and let's give it a margin 50 pixels out, and change the font as well, font family Helvetica. Pretty simple stuff. Now before we move on and start styling our radio buttons, there's a few things I need to explain. The first thing is that it's not actually possible to target these radio buttons, so what we're going to do is we will hide them and then instead create our own radio buttons. The next thing is that you can check off these radio buttons by clicking on the label. Remember, in our index.html file we have our label and they are referencing the inputs. So by clicking on the label we can check off the radio button, and this will be important later as well. Let's start styling our radio buttons. The first thing we'll do is to hide our current radio buttons. Let's target them input and type equals radio, and let's say display none. Perfect. Now let's move on to our labels. Custom radio button form, input type equals radio plus label. What this plus label means is that these styles will apply to all labels that are directly after an input with a type of radio. So if we go back to our index.html, create a new input, type equals email, and ID equals email, and create a label for that, email. Now these styles won't affect this label because this label is not showing up, directly after an input with a type of radio. Let's say display block and give it a margin bottom 10 pixels. This will just make them show up on several lines. Perfect. Now, since our normal radio buttons are now hidden, we will have to create our own. Let's do that now. Custom radio button, input type equals radio plus label. And to do this, we will target a pseudo element. So we will write before. And when you're targeting a pseudo element, you always have to add a content attribute. Say content. You can leave it empty if you want, but it has to be there. What this content attribute does is that it will add whatever you write in these brackets before the label. So let's show an example. And this shows up before our label. In this case, we don't want anything, we just want the pseudo element so we can style it. So we'll give it a width of 20 pixels, height of 20 pixels, and we want our radio button to show up as a circle and not a square. So to do that, we can say border radius 50%, and now it will be a circle. Let's give it a background color, flat UI colors, and choose this one. Paste it in. Now this pseudo element is an inline level element. This means that we can't actually add in width and height. In order to do that, we will have to make it a block level element. So let's say display inline block. The reason we make it inline block is so that it will still show up on the same line as our label. Let's see what we have. Perfect. The next thing we want to do is add some padding between our radio button and our label. So the first thing we'll do is target our label. Say position relative, and our pseudo element will give a position of absolute. This allows us to position this pseudo element relative to our label. So we will say left 0. And now we have said left 0, we can add a padding now to our label. So padding left is 30 pixels. Let's see what we have. Perfect. Next thing we'll do is vertically align the label with the radio button. To do that, we'll just give our label a line height of 20 pixels. The reason it's 20 pixels is because we have given our radio button down here a height of 20 pixels. Let's take a look. And there we go. Now our radio buttons are more or less done. The only problem is that we can't see if the radio button is checked off or not. Remember earlier in the video when I explained that by clicking on the label you can activate the radio button? That still works, we just can't see it right now, so let's do something about that. And to do that, we will target another pseudo element. So let's say custom radio button form, input type equals radio. And now we'll use a CSS selector called checked. So this will basically means that these styles will apply to all inputs that are checked. So you can use this on checkboxes as well. And plus label. And let's target another pseudo element called after. And again, with a pseudo element, we will have to add a content. And we'll leave that empty as well. Now what I want to do with this pseudo element is make it a small circle that appears inside our larger circle here. So let's give it a width of 10 pixels, a height of 10 pixels, and a background color. Let's find another color. Paste that in. And again, we want to make it a circle, so we'll give it a border radius of 50%. There we go. We will again have to make it a block level element, so we will say display inline block. Let's see what we have. And it's not working. Let's see what's wrong. Let's change this to capital F, and let's see what we have. If we try to check off one of our radio buttons, I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually showing up right here. Let's change the color to red for a moment, so it's visible. See, it's showing up here. Now we want it to show up in the middle of this circle instead, so let's fix that. Let's say position absolute again. So now we can position this pseudo element relative to our label again. So if we try to say left 0, top 0, and try to click on one of our labels, we can see it's not quite how we want it. Now that's because the width of this pseudo element is 10 pixels and the height is 10 pixels, and we want to center the position in our big circle here, which is 20 by 20 pixels. So instead of saying left 0, we will say left 5, and instead of top 0, we will say top 5. That's because, as we remember, our bigger circle is 20 by 20 pixels, and this circle is only 10 by 10 pixels, so there's still 10 pixels remaining, and we want 5 pixels on each side, and the same goes for the top attribute. We want 5 pixels on top and 5 pixels on the bottom. Let's take a look, and perfect. Now everything is working now. The last thing I want to address is the cursor. So when clicking on this radio button, the cursor doesn't change, and we kind of expect it to. So let's go back and to this pseudo element, let's say cursor pointer, and now it works as it's supposed to. So that's basically it. You can play around with the values, you can change colors and all these things. And thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.